Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to have two guests joining me from Rocrich AGV Solutions. That's Carson Menke. He is the regional sales manager there. And Brian Markison. He is director of sales as well. He's Carson's boss, is my understanding. So he's going to keep Carson in line today, keep him in check. And we're going to talk about Rocrich, what it is that they do, some of their AGV offerings. And then we're going to talk about kind of the automation landscape as a whole and some of their views on where we are in terms of adoption of automation within the warehousing industry and kind of how the near future is looking within the next year or so around automation as well. So Brian and Carson, welcome to the show. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Doing well, thank you.
Doing well. Good to get you both on here and good to talk about these topics, definitely. So for people that are not familiar with Rocrich AGV Solutions, why don't you kind of give us some background, give us kind of a brief overview, what it is that you guys do and what you focus on?
I can go ahead and take this one. So Rocrich, it's a new name. It's new to the industry. A lot of people are curious what it may be, but it's the combination of Jungheinrich and Rocrich in North America. Everywhere else in the world, they're competitors, but we have the unique advantage of here in the U.S. of having access to both brands, allowing us to provide customers with the best possible solution. And that's where the name Rocrich comes from, is the combination of Rocrich and Jungheinrich. And we get Rocrich. So the North American sales, implementation, and engineering of those two product lines.
Gotcha.
Brian, is there anything you want to add to that, maybe? That's how I usually throw it.
I was going to say, no, that's fine. Yeah, it actually is, we have two proven brands that are actually within our organization that we're trying to bring together to provide a wider breadth of solutions that could come to bear for a customer. And it allows us to blend those and handle more use cases and be a single source from that perspective. Both the organizations that are supporting us are making investments into Rocrich to grow our team and expertise here locally in the North American market.
All right. Interesting. And very good and definitely a new name out there. And I think it makes sense to combine those into one. And as you said, Brian, be able to kind of give that more complete, I guess, offering to the customer and more flexibility there as well to make all those great fits in place. So why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about some of your offerings that you guys have and how you're bringing those to the North American market and where customers or potential customers might find a fit for those offerings.
Yeah, sure. So when I like to look at people asking about products in an AGV sense, I try to stay away from the specs of the units. Everybody coming from a standard MHE conversation is, well, how fast does it drive? What are the ergonomics of it? That's generally the conversation when you're selling a standard forklift. When you're looking at AGVs, it's a little bit different. You want to look at it from a solutions approach. What's your challenge and how do we overcome that? Rather than just being like, okay, yeah, here's my AGV, here's how high it lifts, here's how heavy it lifts. Do you want it? Let's explore what your challenges are and how we can approach that. And then to kind of, still lay out what we're capable of. We have a very large offering under the two brands, Jungheinrich being very standardized their AGVs are based on their standard MHE units. So 90% of the components are the same as a regular counterbalance forklift, their turret truck or their tugger, just with those added sensors and computing abilities on top of that to make it autonomous. Mm-hmm. And then we have Rokla, the dedicated AGV brand with more modularity and some more customizable units. And you can really dive into those niche applications. So we've got very standardized, large scale Heinrich, and then very niche, higher specific units for Rokla. So there's the two different offerings, and just about any challenge that approaches us that a customer may be having, we can put them first and really provide a solution that works for them. That's why I like to, rather than me listing, okay, here's all X number of our units, here's everything they can do. Let's look at what your challenges are, and then we'll make our recommended solution on how we approach that.
Interesting.
I was just going to add to that. I think it really kind of starts understanding how the customer is using material handling equipment throughout their facility and understanding the applications, and then identifying areas that would be beneficial to automate for various different reasons, and then come back in, as Carson said, with a solution set to solve their issue there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting there, Carson, you mentioned, you're utilizing the existing equipment that's already out there and adding the automation to that itself. I mean, why do you think that is so important to that type of solution and being able to essentially not necessarily like reinvent the wheel, right? Take what already works, but let's automate it in some way. Why is that so important?
This is for the Heinrich brand in specific. So looking at that, why is it important to, have a very standard set? 90% of the components are the same, is customer support. You're able to have that parts availability, that technician recognition of, okay, I've seen this before. I know what these components are. So you're able to better support these customers after a system is implemented, as well as you're able to achieve very quick lead times is when it's manufactured very much the same as a standard unit, just with those added safety requirements. You can really support large-scale operations and then much further down the line in the long run. So I think that's where the importance of standardization comes in. And then I don't want to ignore the Rokla side of things that is more modular and specific, and a dedicated AGV company, because that allows us to achieve incredible things as well.
Interesting.
And to add on to the Rokla side, from that perspective, the components in there are also very similar to what they've used on their forklifts. So the standard forklift components are utilized in there. It's just that the form factor that they're placed into is designed to be an AGV from day one. So it's being a little different configuration than a standard forklift, but it has drive motor, steer motor. Those are the same type of components that come directly out of standard forklifts.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it makes so much sense to be able to look at it in that perspective and utilize that. And like I said before, like not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but how do we take what's, form factor that's worked for so many years. And now, let's take kind of the human element out of it a little bit and automate and kind of get some standardized automation processes in place and be able to do that. And I'm curious, Carson, you mentioned in there with the Rokla side that, it's kind of those niche, more specific type of application. So give us like some examples of what that would be for the audience.
Some really impressive capabilities of the Rokla line is, there's some clamp or reel fork applications, so we can pick up large paper bales. There's a reach truck with a moving mast that can go up to 32.5 feet in the air. We have conveyor deck units that can be custom designed, given a customer's different conveyors within their facilities. And then all of these units are modular, so you can take the counterbalance or the base legs or the mast, and you can kind of interchange it to create a solution that's best for that customer. One thing I want to point out about both brands, while being based on existing units, all the components are engineered, designed, and manufactured by the retrospective overhead. Rokla units are a Rokla unit design team, production, And then we have Rocrich, which is the United States implementation and engineering. So there is never a party involved that we're having to go work with and, creating customizations or go out of the way to get different parts. So we're able to have everything in-house here. And Rocrich is so that North American customers don't have to interact with a company that's overseas. You're still able to have that same level of support here in North America while receiving the quality that you have with all that design, engineering, and production in one place. But that kind of deviated a little bit from your question, but those reel forks, those clamps, narrow aisle, V&A, conveyor deck, and these are all things that you can go standard aisle with the Heinrich and V&A with the Heinrich, and there's options in both categories, but we can make a recommendation based on the customer's application itself. Brian, you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and in terms of the type of load and the weight of the load could dictate one solution over the other. And Carson touched on the clamping opportunity. We can do a roll clamp, we can do flat clamps, so that actually opens anywhere from appliance to paper roll to just about any type of clamp that you could utilize at a bail clamp, for example, as well. So it starts to emulate some of the pieces that you could add to a standard forklift, but now we can handle those types of products with an automated load handling sequence.
Very interesting. Yeah. And it sounds like a lot of different offerings and potential flexibility there to be able to automate, which is a great thing to be able to have and be able to offer to potential customers or your existing customers so that they can look at all those different tasks within their operation and look at them to see how they could potentially automate that and make those processes more streamlined and help with some of the challenges around doing those repetitive types of tasks. So I guess when it comes to that, I'm curious from your perspective, both of your perspectives, I mean, why should operations be looking at automation, right? I mean, you guys are rooted kind of in traditional material handling, and you brought into automation into play as well. But why would I want to consider getting out of a manually operated truck by a human and get into an automated one to be able to handle some of those tasks?
I think one of the biggest challenges that warehouses are facing today is just having enough labor on staff showing up every day to do the amount of work that they need to do to move their throughput and get it all done to satisfy their customers. Even before COVID, it was very common that the turnover rate in a warehouse job was 30 to 35%. And then obviously post-COVID, you have huge competition going on between the different companies paying higher and higher wages for somebody to drive a forklift, and then the consistency of that person showing up. So there's huge recruitment costs. The cost of that labor is going up as people compete for lack of resources. And then you have basically consistent training, because as a standard forklift, the company is responsible for compliance on that person is qualified to operate that vehicle. So that's just a bigger labor shortage, consistency of labor, being able to meet higher demand. Then the next piece comes into play is just safety. A lot of people are looking to try to eliminate manual driven forklifts in an area just because of pedestrians, accidents with forklifts, damage to the building, the product, to racking or whatever other items they have in that area. So again, looking at automation gives you a safer environment. And a lot of companies, that's a very important attribute that they're focused in on, and is how to improve safety for the workers that are doing other value-added tasks that they want to make sure are there every day and get the chance to go home every day as they came. So I think those are probably two of the biggest areas that I could think of.
Yeah.
So I want to add to that as well, as in efficiency being a big portion of why people are moving towards automation. I think, safety is my priority, why I like to talk about automation, but I think a lot of customers are looking to cut costs and those savings that you're able to see with an automated AGV system. But as well, another key point is efficiency and moving those pallets from one point to another. with an AGV system, you're able to, depend on that. You can always, the AGV is not going to, you're going to know when it's going to be charging. You're going to know when it's going to be moving, how long it's going to take to do one route. You're able to pull this data and, break it down and see how your operation can be improved and see what changes can be made. So you're able to receive that data from an AGV system as well as have dependability in how it's achieving those tasks and moving those pallets around your facility.
Very interesting. And yeah, I mean, I think all of those are certainly great things to focus on, especially from the safety aspect. And I think that the labor challenges and the safety aspect sometimes go hand in hand. And I think it's very interesting to see because you have a challenge sometimes getting labor and probably one of the toughest positions to fill is a forklift operator, right? Is to get somebody in the door right now. And one of the most expensive roles in the warehouse now too. The wages have gone very high, which goes back to the efficiency standpoint and the cost perspective. But as you look at that, sometimes you want to maybe get creative internally and say like, okay, well, you've been a packer here for a while. How about we throw you on a reach truck, right? And see what happens, right? And you have a lot of maybe potentially new or novice operators, which could be potentially a safety issue. So you're dealing with a lot of different moving parts there, whether it's heavy loads that they're moving or dealing with, or potential collisions or accidents, bumping into racking can be catastrophic potentially. So it's great that you guys are focusing on that as well. And I think the case for automation is certainly stronger and stronger. And I think more people are realizing that and starting to trickle down not only to, the big companies out there that, have teams just focused on automation and things like that, but also the small and medium sized markets too are starting to realize that like, hey, we need to get some automation, some level of robotics or something in place to be able to keep up, which I think is really important to see. So in that regard, I'm curious from your perspectives and what you see in the market, the customers you're talking to or potential customers you're talking to. I mean, where would you gauge that we are as an industry from the warehouse perspective in terms of automation adoption? Do you think we're at the point of, full acceptance that, yeah, this is definitely something that needs to happen for us, or is there still some people resisting? Where do you think we are kind of within the industry on that adoption level?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, I'm still relatively new in the material handling space in a perspective view. So I'd be kind of curious to hear Brian's point as well on what he's seen from over time about how people have begun to approach this and what the state of the industry, because as long as I've been in it, automation has been an option. It's been there.
Right.
So I'm curious to hear Brian's point as well.
All eyes on Brian.
Yeah, I did earn all that. So anyway, I think it's very true. I think there's a combination of a couple different things that are coming together to make automation on several different fronts become appealing to a warehouse manager to deploy. Number one, the technology has continued to improve and is improving even faster every day. The amount of use cases from where it used to be 10 years ago, what you could automate versus what can be automated today, has continued to expand. Companies are now being able to go out and demonstrate capabilities of doing those use cases consistently. And so the continuum of what has to be done manually versus automation is starting to continuing to expand on what it's capable of doing. And then as the technology has changed, we've also had improvements in the computers in terms of the getting smaller and faster and more powerful than ever, and the cost on those continue to go down. So now you look at opportunities to have not only technology increasing and improving and expanding, but that cost of that same technology is starting to hit a point now where companies can look at it. I think, in a weird way, COVID, with the supply chain challenges that happened and what had actually happened as companies were struggling when lockdowns and all that, looking at automation definitely helps insulate something that prior to COVID, I would imagine any management team ever looked at that as something we'd have to develop a contingency for.
Right.
So now that that's happened, it's something now that management of organizations are trying to figure a contingency out. So having some automation plans or roadmap, I think is an important piece now just about for every company to look at. And the continuation of the aging of the workforce to begin with. We talked already on the shortage of labor or qualified labor and the challenges of securing that. I think the challenge as we move forward here in the next 5 years is it'll continue to be even more of a challenge as the baby boomers go to retirement. Now you have more of a dynamic, higher, work-life balance group coming in terms of that generation. And then also looking for opportunities that challenge them or give them fulfillment. And that's a little different animal than looking at the baby boomers that were just, here's a task, I'm going to go do it, and then could do that. I kind of laugh because I've been in material handling or around it now for 30 years, or almost 30 years now. Back in the day, you had forklift operators that could flip a quarter up off the floor onto the forks and go take that into a vending machine. I think you'd be hard pressed to find those type of operators today. And today's, so if you look at the skill level and the skill set that's involved in that, there was pride in doing that. Now folks just look at that as either an entry job or just something to get by for in the short term while they look for the next best opportunity kind of thing. I think the other piece that makes it a little challenging is as we've increased on technology and that from a usage standpoint or an acceptance standpoint is there's a lot of choices of what you can automate. And even in the movement of pallets throughout a facility or how you would move your product, there are many different options. So again, that's where having the opportunity to sit down with different companies like Rocrich and talk through how we would approach. And then with the legacy of our two brands, both being in the industry and having AGVs for over 40 years with, successful facilities throughout the world, how we can bear that to help move their products and have kind of a trusted advisor from that perspective.
Very interesting and definitely very interesting perspective and insights from your experience there and throughout the industry and seeing that evolution. I mean, I think it's really very interesting to see. And like you mentioned, it's hard to find a skilled operator like that these days. And, it's having somebody for just a short term and, not really caring about how they necessarily operate equipment or maybe thinking from going back to the safety aspect there too, or even thinking like, the danger that a forklift can present, and maybe not realizing, how dangerous it can be potentially a bad thing and a risk, right, for a company. So being able to, have consistency for the long term in those automation type of solutions, I think is a really good thing to realize for companies and be able to see that. And like you said, there's so many options out there now, some of which you guys are offering. And I think it's a great thing to be able to see that. And I think it's probably a relief in some regard for some warehouse workers too. Some of those repetitive, very mundane tasks that they don't like to do are getting automated out there. So I think that's a great thing to be able to see. So as we talk about kind of the current state and adoption of in the industry itself, I mean, I'm curious as we look into, the next year, next 2 years in the short term, I mean, how do you see automation kind of continuing to grow? What direction do you think it's heading in? I mean, what do you think the future looks like?
To add to, I mean, to talk about what that timeline looks like, I think we're at the ground floor. As dystopian or as utopian as you want to look at it, I think there will be a day far in the future where robots do everything for us and humans live a perpetual vacation. In the movie WALL-E, that's a bad thing, and there's iRobot, that's a bad thing. All the movies make it a bad thing, but I'm a very optimistic person, so I'm going to look at that as a utopian world where robots are doing our jobs and we live a perpetual vacation. You know, I get to spend some more time hiking, but I'm in the right side of the industry right now. I'm behind the robots. I can see our engineering and our safety, and from that perspective, so I can trust it. But I think from an outside point of view, it's scary to a lot of people, but I think it's the way that the world's going. And while scary, I think most people would support it, being more knowledgeable on what the safe holds are for the systems and how they are regulated and all the standards that they adhere to. Given that, though, I don't think that people should be performing some of the jobs they are in some of the warehouses, repeatable, unsafe jobs. These are jobs that robots should be doing. In the next 2 to 10 years, I think I see this industry grow. We're seeing a lot of new startups enter the space, trying to get their piece of the pie and add to the robotics, because that's where companies are going. You see some really cool advancements of different types. And I mean, ours are autonomous forklifts, AGVs, and we have, I say only, but it's an extensive number, but we have around 10,000 AGVs in operation worldwide under the two brands, Rocrich and Heinrich. And I say only at this point, because one day that will be hundreds of thousands of units in operation in facilities. I think it's the way of the industry. It makes sense on a safety, efficiency, dependability, and cost savings point of view. And we're seeing that in major companies. Look at Amazon. They have made their entire operation just about automated, except for those few select roles.
Right.
And that's the industry leader in the economy, basically. If you look at largest companies up there, and if other companies are wanting to stay competitive, it's who's adhering to automation, who's picking up on this and making those changes. It's almost like the fool's fallacy. Who's holding the bag the longest? You're an early adopter. You could be, impacted by early technology, and you come in too late and you've missed the train. So I think we're going to see a lot of people starting to line up here, and this industry really shift towards a exponential curve.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it's only slated to grow, as you said there, Carson. And I'm curious, Brian, what do you think? Carson's newer to the industry, as you said. You're the vet here. So what do you think? Well, you've seen the material handling industry for now 30 years. I think you said. What do you think it looks like going into the future here?
Yeah, I think in the near term, I think companies are definitely looking at automation in many different ways. And in our inquiries are continuing to grow for coming in, looking for how to move their pallets or their other loads throughout their facility and what we can do. I think that's a key aspect, is to get moving on that automation journey. And I kind of look at it and should be explained in that manner, because it's not like you walk in and change a warehouse one day over and, literally automate the whole place. First of all, you shouldn't do that. Second of all, you're going to want to phase it in and work your way through the process. So getting that first step, getting that first automation job, because it's not only putting the technology in and doing that, but as you put it in and deploy it, you do have some change management to go around it, as well as not only, you're not necessarily going to take a manual process and fully automate that. You're going to make some changes to it. One, so that the automation is being, maximized on how it would work most efficiently. But it also allows you then to scale it, and you're looking at maybe optimizing processes while you're getting ready to automate. So there's kind of a choreographed methodology you want to work through, from looking at today and what the future state has, and having that automation journey kind of continue through and look at it piece by piece. But getting that first one on your belt, you can kind of start to understand how then you can start doing more rapid changing as you move forward. The first step's the hardest one, because you have, as an organization now, how to learn how to do that, how to implement that, because there is some onus on the customer's perspective on how to manage post go live so that they can then utilize it and then get the full benefit out of it and do it in a safe manner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really great points there, and certainly a great point there to figure out what is that first step in what could be, a longer journey, and making sure that you're putting the right pieces in place to be able to do that. So really appreciate the insights here from both of you guys, and learning more about Rocrich as well, and kind of looking into the future of what might be in automation. And Carson, we know you're looking forward to more future automation so you can spend more time on the hiking trails. It sounds like no robots to do the hiking for you, right? You want to still do that, right? So
I'm sure there will be people that will be carried up Mount Everest by a robot at one day.
Yeah, well, if the robot can go up Mount Everest, right, we can just watch the live feed, right, from its eyes, something like that. So very interesting to talk to you both here and learn about all these different insights and the solutions that you guys are offering. If people are interested in learning more about Rocrich and what it is you do, and getting into contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
They can actually go to our website, rocrich.com, and there's a contact us form that they can fill in, and then it'll come in, and we can then reach out and talk through whatever opportunity or applications you would like to discuss.
All right, awesome. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So Brian and Carson, thank you very much for joining me on the show today and providing some insights.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.